Okay, great. Thank you. So as kind of Mike had talked about, the importance of this program, and I think as it's been again mentioned numerous times today. I think one of the key quotations here is, can we remain in a relationship with someone who thinks so differently than we do about the most fundamental values? And if so, how? Well, our hope is by the time we finish this program, that we will have the skills that will allow us to do that. As Nadine or Eileen had mentioned earlier, it's a skill that we need to develop and to work on. And certainly this program will give us those communication tools um, to do that, but also give us opportunities to look at the situations in different contexts. For example, as you see below, a heated disagreement with a spouse, or, interrupting racism in the office, or political or, theological or church questions, or, issues of whatever topic they may be. And regardless of how, you know, polarizing or not the question may be, this will really help us to give the skills and the tools to really be effective relationship builders through the art and the act of communication. Next slide, please. So, as we have for all of our mission focus or just faith programs, um, these are kind of our overarching goals for the program itself. So, the different topics that we've looked at through the years now really helps to have us better understand ourselves, understand how we can use our faith to address some of these really difficult issues, to build relationships, kind of like we just did with all our introductions, uh, but also, as Mike mentioned, and I think is very key, to be able to remember, because I think we all know this, that we are all children of God, made in God's image, but that sometimes we don't always treat each other like that. So our hope is that through understanding of these difficult issues, or by getting into dialogue with people, we will be able to, again, improve ourselves into, more of God's image. Next slide, please. Now, specifically for this program, again, what we're really looking at is building up the tools and the skills to be able to have those difficult conversations with people. Whether it's again on a political or personal, or we've finished up racism programs in the past, which I think also was a common thing that kind of came out of those programs, is how do we have our discussions or dialogues with people to discuss these difficult issues. So part of the objective of this program is definitely to be able to learn how to do that in the most Christ-like way possible. And again, to really be able to bring people together through the art of dialogue and listening and discussion. Next slide, please. So a couple things to keep in mind, I think, especially since we just kind of, for those of us who had just finished, relatively speaking, the racial series that Just Faith has. This will continue to be just as focused as all of the Just Faith programs are. So we will definitely be looking at it, from our faith perspective, but really kind of focusing on a lot of the justice issues that surround us, and how we can really use dialogue and listening to address that. Also, very much like we had through every Just Faith program, we'll be able to hear and listen to and dialogue with people with other perspectives. And as I think, Eileen or Nadine had mentioned earlier, when you get in those situations where, we don't always know what to say, because it's like someone may be saying something that's just so completely opposite of what we feel, is to take that time to build that space and say, I see things differently, or, let's talk about that. So by having all these different perspectives, we'll have that opportunity to really practice what we're going to be learning. And the last thing is, which I think is something that we often take for granted, but it's really important, especially, when you're talking sometimes very weighty issues, of the humility that we share and that we bring to a conversation, but also, let's not take ourselves too seriously at times. So as we go through the next series of programs in the next couple of weeks, there will be opportunities for us to certainly, kind of check our egos, if you will, be a little bit more humble, but also, kind of do some fun things to really bring out that opportunity to dialogue and to listen. Because again, there's a lot of different ways in which to approach this. And certainly we'll be learning some new tools and devices, if you will, that'll kind of help us get there. Next slide, please. As we've also mentioned before, and we've seen in the JustFaith programs, we'll bump up against boundaries. And this is, again, sharing something from, sharing your thoughts or your opinions and such is very precious to the person who's sharing it. And that's something we definitely want to do, is we want to respect that relationship that you have with your thought and such. But at the same time, we want to make sure that you feel comfortable to share that. So it can be a fine line at times as to, when we'd like, when you should share your stuff or when you don't want to share your stuff. But hopefully we'll be able to recognize that kind of subtle gray area of, listening in a very loving and faith-based perspective. But again, it's definitely something that we will talk about as we go through this program. This is also a lifelong process. Again, as it was mentioned, this is something that we usually learn very early, even though we don't always realize that it's a learning process. But it's like any skill or any ability. You have to keep practicing, you have to keep doing it. And this program will kind of put us in a couple of different scenarios at times, what will allow us to actually practice that, so through role playing and such, to really get a feel for a good use of the applications and the programs. And the final thing here is mistakes. I have to say for myself that before I started the Faith and Racial Justice series, I want to do nothing but talk. I said, we should talk to all sorts of people. We should understand where they're coming from. But as I started to have those conversations, I realized that some of the questions that I was asking or the dialogue we were starting was kind of painful for the person sharing. So that was a mistake that I made, and I said, whoa, I better back off a little bit. And kind of reset my thinking as to how I approach these sort of conversations. But I think that's part of anything. I mean, that's part of a growing process. It's part of a healing process. It's part of a learning process. So we're all going to make mistakes, definitely. But again, within the context of our groups and the dialogues and the conversations, we'll be able to have the opportunity to learn and to practice those times when, we're going to make mistakes, but we just realize that we've done it and try not to do it again. Kind of like when you go to confession, it's you confess your sin and say, I hope I don't do it again, but it doesn't always happen that way. Next slide, please. So in terms of the programs themselves, again, this is an 8-week session, but we also have, as you may recall from previous programs, we will have opportunities for immersions and different speakers. But again, just kind of going through these first 4, laying the foundation. So we'll kind of get some background and some history on communication, interpersonal relationships, kind of in our homes, our communities, and our world, and kind of look at that through the filter or the lens of our faith. And again, how we may have done things differently before that maybe we should do differently going forward. Then as we kind of narrow the funnel, we'll be going more towards our communities. And again, what are some of the issues and some of the opportunities that give us chance to practice these tools in a more kind of in a smaller group, if you will. We'll also talk about sacred listening, whether, you know, you may have heard this by a number of different names, but again, kind of as Mike touched on, as we're all, you know, children of God, we all have value. And what we say and what we believe also has value. I mean, the Holy Spirit kind of talks to us in different ways. And this will be one of the sections that we talk about how we can really be aware of sacred listening and use it. But again, like anything, it's a skill and art that we'll need to develop. The next section will be empathy for justice. And again, this will be kind of talking about how we build those relationships and those bridges with people that we're discussing when we get into, you know, difficult topics of injustice, which again, this will all, I mean, this is a theme that we'll see many times, but on this session specifically, we'll be able to kind of focus on some of the skills to kind of build that strength of that skill. Next slide, please. Number 5, I think if definitely we heard today, and I think everyone will kind of agree that being able to deal with the hostility and anger, I think that is out there in our world, and the polarity that that people feel will be huge. So I think if you know, any one of these weeks will be important, but I think just on the surface, this one will definitely be something that will get a lot of mileage or a lot of applications. The next one, session 6 rather, is requesting change and demanding change. Again, how do we, you know, we can always start the dialogue, and that's important, and get people talking, but fundamentally in the end, we want to make change. We want to change our hearts. We want to change, you know, our world. We want to change, you know, our communities and such. And this particular week will give us an opportunity to kind of look at that as how do we use this as an act or as a kind of a tool for change. And then, like I say, we have our immersion experience, which Eileen will be taking us through. And then section 7 here is what do we do when the answer is no? Which again is something that is a skill I think that we can probably use in many different applications. But as we're trying to work on change, you know, we're going to have to deal with some opinions and stuff that may require us to take a different route, or as it says here, you know, finding that third way to building that relationship and coming to that consensus that we need. And then, as all of the Just Faith programs are, the 8th section will be what's next. Now, typically, although Just Faith really focuses specifically on that final session as our next steps, one thing that I would really like to suggest to the groups is that, you know, even in day 1, because you'll find, I mean, I've never heard anyone say, wow, that was a really long 8 weeks. It's always like, wow, I can't believe it's over. So although this is a very important part of the process, and again, will be the main focus in session 8, I suggest that as you go through the program, consider, you know, projects or consider activities that your group can take or you can take, or maybe when we come together, group or actions that the whole group can take. Because, you know, you don't kind of want to wait to the end to make that decision. You know, start thinking of that process as we go through. Because again, as I've mentioned, the 8 weeks will go very, very quickly. Okay, and I think, Rosemary, I think this is back to you.
Back to me. Thank you so much for that overview, Patrick. I wish Denise was still on the line with us, because I think when you walk through the agenda and some of the content that's ahead of us, we're going to get some answers to deal with the situation that she described. So I'm very optimistic. So I'm just going to walk you through the logistics of the study. There are 2 books that are key to this. And the first one is called Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When the Stakes Are High. And some people have asked me which book, because different editions are out. Any of them will work if you have one, but the one we're recommending is the latest one, which is 3rd edition. And then there's a book that we've used in past studies, so you may have it. It's called The Compassion Book, Lessons from the Compassion Course. And it's also available from Just Faith. Now, we don't have any reading assignments from these 2 books due until the week of February 20th, that week. So if you don't have your book, don't worry. You've got time to get it and read in preparation for the first assignment. And if you need any help getting those books, just give me a call and I'll give you a hand. But here's something else that this study invites us to include, and that is a notebook, just a regular notebook like a college course notebook, because we are going to be creating throughout the course of our 8 weeks together a toolkit for tough conversations made up from the tips and tools that resonate with us as we go throughout the study. And I'm thinking that because we also have articles and websites and things that we consult, you might also want to have a folder or a binder to keep those in to make it easy to be able to consult this information. There's a couple of other books that have fed some of our interest in this topic that you might also want to consider now or sometime in the future. And one is called The Sacred Art of Listening, which gives 40 reflections for cultivating a spiritual practice. And another is Practicing the Sacred Art of Listening, a guide to enrich your relationship and kindle your spiritual life. Now, there's a lot of information here. I'm going to send this out to everyone that's responded to me in an email, but it's already posted on our group in Realm. And if you have not gotten an invitation to our group, Realm is a communication platform that we use here at St. Joan. But if you haven't gotten your invitation to that, please send me a chat note. Make sure I have your email address, and I'll get you connected, because in Realm, we are also going to be posting weekly assignments and slides and things that you'll want to look at. Here's our schedule. This is also on Realm. I'll send you a copy after today. But basically, we're going to be gathering every week, beginning Monday, February 14th. And then we have the immersion experience that Patrick talked about on March 27th. And then we'll have a completion celebration. Both of these are activities just like this kickoff when we bring all groups together, so we get to learn from each other and share and learn from our speaker. Our speaker, of course, on the 27th is going to be Nadine Durant, teaching us how to truly listen. And then on our completion ceremony, we have a yet-to-be-announced guest speaker. When you get your schedule, you'll see at the bottom that it's got the Zoom link to the Sunday gatherings and to the Monday and Wednesday gatherings. We also have been invited, if these times don't work for you, excuse me, to join St. John Vianney on Thursday night. And I see Nancy has stayed so that you'll be able to meet her, excuse me, if you choose that. This is a sign from the Holy Spirit. I've been talking too much. So I mentioned Realm. It's a group called Mission Focus. Mission Focus is the ministry here at St. Joan that has been bringing Just Faith to us. And the group is called Communication, or WTT for Want to Talk. And there you'll find study materials, the schedule, the weekly assignments, reminders of the gatherings, inspiration. There's already a couple of inspiration that's been shared. And then every week we'll be updating what the assignment is for the next week, any handouts you'll need to read before the next week, and the slides that are going to be used. So you'll get a copy of everything there on the group on Realm. So we do have a pre-assignment before we gather the week of February 13th, and that is to read 2 articles that you'll find on Realm, but I'll also send this out in my follow-up email. They're both 5-page articles. One is called, Is America in Danger of Losing Its Soul? And the other is called Jesus, the Third Way. And I'll give you links to those online, but also I'll send you copies in the follow-up. Then there's also a participant packet that comes from Just Faith directly to you. And the assignment for our first gathering, is to go through the introductory materials, which, by the way, we've already taken you through, and we'll take you through all of the materials in the participant packet. I will post that on Realm, and if you're not on Realm or can't get on Realm and want a copy of it, I'll send it to you. But it's a lengthy document, so I'm not going to email it to you. But we will get that information to you as we get together each week. Very quickly, I want to just remind us that we have Community of Trust guidelines. You're going to be walking through these the first week that you get together, but they're really important to keep in mind, especially as we may encounter opportunities to learn to use our new tools to communicate. But you can see here that we want to welcome everybody. We want to listen intently. We want to be present. We don't want to be fixing other people's problems, just listening to whatever we share. This idea of turning to wonder is one we've loved, that we've learned throughout the Just Faith studies. But when the going gets too tough, wonder what made that person come to think that way, and to wonder, why am I reacting the way that I am? And this helps in many facets in life, but my husband, who's on the line with me, can tell you that when we turn to wonder instead of anger, we get much better results. So it's great. Then just a couple of other things: learning from silence, trusting silence, of course, observing confidentiality. But then this last one's another fun one. Know the possibilities. Be open to the possibility that you're going to leave each gathering with what you needed, and more than when you arrived. And the possibility that things that may not make sense to you today may, in a couple of weeks, find seeds to that are planted that will keep growing. So it's not too late to enjoy this and join the study. You can invite your friends. We've made a recording. The recording is continuing, and we will share that with you along with a copy of these slides. So if you'd like to invite someone else, you can share it with them.